tomorrow. 3 days in a row. We're busting it out.
We're busting.
No, not like that. Alright. So, last chapter. You want to tell me what happened? It was literally yesterday.
uh, I to lock in. Bro, I don't know.
They cooked food, and Peishu ate it, and he got all
Right,
sick. And then
right,
they found a. They started going deeper in. They went east or west. I can't remember which one, but they went one of the directions because there was a
right,
powerful guy coming from one direction, but an even more powerful guy coming from the other direction. So they go
right.
that direction, and they start going deeper into Mount Tonglu, and they're seeing remnants of like an ancient city. And it doesn't really look that old because it's kind of sealed off in the spiritual realm of Mount Tonglu now. But they go into this um, temple, and it's all burnt inside. And Shilian is like, oh, this is like a temple, and it got burned. And I know that because all my temples got burned. And there were slash marks on the plaque outside because people were obviously angry for some reason. And then um, and then it ended with Pei putting his arm around Banyu and then getting stung.
Right. He did in fact do that.
He did do that. So that ends with Shilian understood. This was nothing more than a tragedy inflicted on Pei Ming by his own itchy hands. Pei Ming finally yanked off the scorpion snake, but his left hand was already hugely swollen. Give me the antidote, quick! I'm sorry, I already used up the Banyu ferns I had on me, Banyu said. It's all right, Shilian said. General Pei, you're a heavenly official. The swelling will go down soon enough. Then he turned around and continued to examine the walls. As his eyes swept over a blackened area, he froze. Everyone, come see, he called. There's still a face on this wall. Chapter 80. Four Heavenly Kings hidden on darkened walls. There really was a face. Perhaps the flames hadn't consumed it entirely, or maybe the melting point had flowed down and shielded the image from ruin. Whatever the case, beneath the tip of Shilian's finger there was a chunk of an illustration depicting a human face. He began to carefully scratch away the solidified black material. Is your Highness really that fascinated by some mural? Pei Ming asked, holding his very swollen left hand. It's not fascination, Shilian replied, but rather I have a daring idea. Let's hear it, Pei Ming said. We've gotten a rare chance to enter Mount Tonglu territory. While we work to stop the rise of a new king, perhaps we can also find out more about the position itself. For example, who created the role? What kind of power is supporting all of this? Perhaps we might even be able to destroy it in one sweep and rid the world of this disaster for good. We'd never have to worry about another ghost king being born. That really is a daring idea, Pei Ming said. But if Hua Changzhe never discovered anything while he was here, we'd probably only be wasting our time. I don't recommend trying it in our current circumstances. Hua Cheng spoke up. I didn't make any such discoveries because my talents are dull and my abilities limited. Besides, last time, I was too busy killing. The results will be different if Guga takes the lead on this investigation. No, no, no. I'm the one whose abilities are limited. Sun Lung is much more capable than me, Shilian said. ... As if he couldn't listen anymore, Pei Ming tossed Pei Shu over to Banyue and turned to walk outside. I think I'm going to go get some fresh air. It was surprisingly easy for Shilian to chip off a few chunks of the black, hardened substance. He blinked. This can actually be... The hard layer of charred material could actually be peeled off in large pieces. In the short span of those few words, he had already peeled off a significant amount to reveal a human face about the size of a baby's fist. The lines were simple, but the face's expression was lively, like it was chasing after something. The passion in the eyes was as clear as crystal. The hard black material seemed to have acted as a protective layer atop the mural proper, and the colors underneath were as vibrant as the day they'd first been painted. Shilian turned his head. Sunlang, let's do this together. Hua Cheng didn't move, but a field of shimmering silver light began to gleam in the darkness. Hundreds of silver butterflies silently appeared, then fluttered to rest on the blackened walls. Shilian heard small chirping sounds as they flitted their wings in unison. Innumerable small cracks crawled across the black walls like a fracturing mask. With a crumble, the black material covering the walls completely shattered, revealing the true image behind. It was a giant, colorful mural. Raising his head to look at the wall, Shilian felt chills. The mural was divided into 4 levels. The highest level shimmered with golden light and was crowded with clouds, but no people were present. On the second level, there was only one individual depicted, a handsome young man dressed in white. Golden light surrounded him. The artist had used the same gold paint as the top level. On the third level, 4 characters were depicted. Each of their faces, apparel, expressions, and gestures were different, and they were half the size of the white-clad young man on the second level. The fourth level, which was the lowest, was covered with countless figures, and they were half the size of those on the third level. Each of their faces were exactly the same. Their expressions were open and full of passion, worship, and rapture. The first face Shilian had discovered was one of those at the very bottom. The lines in the mural were elegant and mature, and Shilian was stunned for a long time before he found his voice. Sunlang, have you ever seen this before? Hua Cheng's response was hesitant. I traversed half of Mount Tonglu's domain and walked through almost every one of Wu Yang's holy temples, but I swear I've never seen anything like this before. Shilian came back to himself. I don't think this mural is from 2,000 years ago. There's no way it can be, Hua Cheng said. Look at how well the colors have kept, as well as its overall condition. I'd say it's at most 100 years old, or maybe even newer than that, which meant that this mural had been painted after the kingdom's destruction. Shilian pointed at the highest level. That level must be depicting the heavens, since the law of heaven presides over all sentient beings. Then there's a picture of the mural.
Hmm.
Scout, stop. Then he pointed at the second level. This level must show the crown prince of Wu Yang. Since this holy temple was made to worship him, he's naturally the main subject of the mural, which is also why he's the biggest figure in this painting and surrounded by the same color light as the heavens. He's only slightly below the law of heaven. Then he pointed to the fourth level. The figures at the lowest level are the smallest, and all their faces are the same. They must be the people of Wu Yang. Finally, he pointed at the third level. But who are these 4? Regardless of their poses or expressions, they're situated above the people of Wu Yang and below the crown prince. That means they likely all have the same status. Ministers? Vassals? Or... Hua Cheng took a few steps closer. Guga, look. They also have a sheen of spiritual light on their bodies. Sure enough, they did. The light radiating the crown prince of Wu Yang was so strong that it far outshone their spiritual light in comparison. The answer dawned on Shilian. They're heavenly officials the crown prince appointed after he ascended, which meant that they were the same as Feng Xin and Mu Qing once upon a time. Shilian made a round of the great hall and confirmed it was only this wall facing the gates that hid secrets. The other 3 walls were thoroughly burnt from crust decor. Who left this mural behind, and for whom was it left? What kind of message were they trying to communicate? Shilian couldn't deduce much from just one painting. He hummed for a moment, then turned to Hua Cheng. As we continue on the road, let's pay more attention to the other holy Wu Yang temples. I have a feeling that there can't be only one mural like this. Hua Cheng inclined his head. I intend to. The 2 of them and Ban Yue, who was supporting Pei Shu, left the holy temple. It was only then that Shilian remembered their team member. Where's General Pei? Pei Ming had said that he needed some fresh air and went outside. Even though they dallied in the great hall for a good while, he still hadn't come back. Shilian called out a few times, but received no response. I hope he hasn't gotten lost at a time like this. The 4 looked around the small, desolate town, but their search was fruitless. Furthermore, they couldn't use the spiritual communication array in Mount Tonglu. Just as Shilian was beginning to feel desperate, Hua Cheng spoke up. Guga, don't worry. I have a way. He extended a hand. In his palm there was a tiny silver butterfly, which started flapping its wings. It flew around Shilian, circling him a few times. While Shilian thought it was charming, he didn't know how it could help. What? Just then he heard labored breathing. A few moments later, a man's voice came from the silver butterfly. Never thought I'd see you here, the man said. Pei Ming! Shilian looked at Hua Cheng, who snickered. Yesterday, I planted a silver butterfly on everyone. Pei Shu arduously raised his head. So, you can use silver butterflies to monitor everyone's movement without them noticing you? As expected, of Crimson Race Flower. Don't speak if you don't know how to form sentences, Hua Cheng sniped. Shilian cupped the little silver butterfly in his palm and called out to it. General Pei? Where are you? Who's in front of you? I'm sorry, Gaga, Hua Cheng said. You can only listen, not speak through it. Shilian gave it a thought and acquiesced. Fair enough. If the listener's voice could pass through, then it could easily give its presence away to the other party, couldn't it? Soon after, the frigid, exhausted voice of another man spoke. Old Pei, a word of warning. You better not spew any ridiculous nonsense right now. Be careful, or I might start smacking you around. Shilian's eyes widened at that voice. It was the voice of Ling Wen's male form. I see, Shilian exclaimed. So the man in black who killed so many along the way was Ling Wen in his male form. Is it Ling Wen Qianbei who took General Pei away? Pei Shu asked. I don't know, I'm still listening, Shilian replied. On the other end, Pei Ming said, Noble Ji, why the temper? Shut up, Ling Wen said. I told you not to speak. I'm not the one with the temper, it's someone else. I'm warning you. I can't control my body right now, so I won't be responsible for any injuries you sustain by my hand. Who are you trying to scare? We're both in the same predicament. We can't move a muscle, Pei Ming said. Shilian looked up. It's not Ling Wen who caught General Pei. Someone else has trapped them somewhere. Then he pondered somberly. They even suppressed the brocade immortal. Who could it be? Are you still wearing? Pei Ming asked. He didn't say it out loud, but everyone knew what he was referring to. The brocade immortal. Yeah, and he really doesn't like you. So watch what you say, Ling Wen replied. How would you know what he's thinking? Pei Ming wondered. Honestly, I can't believe you. What's gotten into you starting trouble like this? So audacious, going so far as to steal from the Temple of Divine Might? You broke your own golden bowl, and now you've come running down Mount Tonglu. What, did he tell you to do all this? And then golden bowl means an expression meaning steady job. He didn't make me. I'm the one who wanted to come, Ling Wen said. Old Pei, stop asking questions. He's getting mad. I can feel it. Pei Ming shut up. After a while, Ling Wen puffed a light breath. It seemed that the brocade immortal had finally calmed down, so he picked up the conversation again. And what's with you, old Pei? What are you doing coming to Mount Tonglu? And were you stung by 1,000,000 hornets on your left hand, or what? That wound looks horrid. Pei Ming's voice was extremely sullen and woeful. Got off to a bad start. It's a long story. Little Pei isn't making my life easy either. I shouldn't have wound up in such pathetic circumstances, but who could have known I'd be jinxed the moment I arrived? If I weren't injured, do you think I'd let someone drag me to this hellish place? I didn't even see who it was. Can't you specify which hellish place already? Shilian thought. Say whether you're in a cave or a house or what, or I'll at least know where to look. Let me drink. Scout, you gotta wait a few more minutes. It wasn't like there were no clues whatsoever, though. The teleportation array couldn't be used in Mount Tonglu, so Pei Ming mustn't have gotten far. Their voices sounded somewhat hollow and echoed faintly, so they had to be somewhere spacious, and Julianne could vaguely hear the sound of water. They hadn't run across any rivers or lakes along the way, and there weren't any buildings around that were more spacious than the nearby Wuyang Temple. Therefore, there was only one place they could be, underground. But that didn't tell them much. This small town wasn't all that small. They were underground, but where exactly? And what about you? Pei Ming asked. I hear you killed over 1,000 nefarious creatures. Everyone's terrified. Congratulations. Well, you can't be the #1 civil god anymore, so why not change careers and join us martial gods? What manner of creature managed to bind you here? Ling Wen laughed bitterly. I don't know what it is either. I accidentally clashed with Lord Rainmaster and was dizzy afterwards, so something took the chance to ambush me from behind. No need to ask me. It'll show itself sooner or later. Just remember not to expose your identity. Just then a third voice interrupted their conversation. Pei Ming, Nangongji, you nasty couple. You can stop your smug calculations. You think I don't know what's under your fake skins? It was a man's voice, one that sounded very foreign. Even though Shilian knew that he couldn't be heard from the other end, he still hushed his voice. Someone's there. I don't know if he'll harm General Pei. We have to find where they are as soon as possible. The two on the other end seemed completely stunned by the newcomer, and it took a moment for Pei Ming to speak. Might I ask who my lord is? Why hide your face if you've gone this far? You should ask yourself that question, the voice said. They must have a grudge against you, Ling Wen said. Probably another ghost woman you ruined. Keep spouting drivel with your eyes wide open, why don't you? Just which part of this thing looks like a woman? Besides, he didn't capture me. Maybe he's got a grudge against you. Never mind that. At a time like this, let's not discuss where the blame lies. Let's overcome this obstacle together, Ling Wen said. It's also possible he's got a grudge against both of us. Do you recall anyone like that? Not specifically. There are too many, Pei Ming said. The man must have approached them as his voice became louder. But strangely, there was no accompanying sound of footsteps. There were instead a series of odd thumping sounds. Can you two be a little less shameless and stop flirting in front of me? He griped. His words and tone seemed to reveal something, and after a brief silence, Ling Wen spoke. You're Jingwen Shenjun. The voice didn't respond. Pei Ming seemed to be a little taken aback as well. Jingwen Shenjun? No way. Did Jingwen Shenjun ever speak so impolitely? Ling Wen humphed. He's always been like this. He put on one face in front of others and another in front of me. Of course you don't recognize him. On his end, Shilian frowned, his brows. Jingwen Shenjun. He thought he could faintly remember a name, but he couldn't be sure. The name sounded like a civil god. There were far too many civil gods who used the same collection of words in their titles. Literature, respect, or tranquility. I guess Wen means literature. Pei Shu explained in a low voice. Jingwen Shenjun was the previous top-ranking civil god who first appointed Ling Wen Shenjun to the heavens. With this, Shilian finally remembered. The first time he ascended, Ling Wen was still a junior civil official in the lower court, not yet the top-ranking civil god of the upper court. And apparently Jingwen Shenjun was the previous number one. However, Jingwen had long since declined as a god. There was not a single temple of Jingwen to be found within a 400-kilometer radius. Scout, lie down. Everyone knows each other, so why can't we talk peacefully? Shilian couldn't help but wonder aloud. Must we bring out the weapons and rope right at the start? It's because everyone knows each other that the knives come first, Hua Cheng replied. The words had only just left Hua Cheng's lips when Jingwen spoke again on the other end. Since his identity had been revealed, it seemed he felt the need to put on a front, and he changed his tone to something more polite. Nonetheless, his words were still barbed. Nangang, weren't you pleased with the top-ranking civil god in the upper court? Why did you break your golden bowl and come running here? Pei Ming piped up. You see, his grudge is against you. It's your fault I got dragged into this. General Pei, Jingwen continued, don't think that you're off the hook just because I'm seeking vengeance against Nangang. This wench insulted and harassed my worshippers and secretly desecrated my temples of Jingwen, adding fuel to the fire. Just don't think I don't know who loaned her the martial officials who helped her. ... Don't you laugh either, Nangang, Jingwen continued. And to think I appointed you back then because I valued your talent, and this is how you repay me? You ungrateful, venomous wench! I've waited for this day for too long, too long! Shilian covered his forehead with his palm. The three tumors certainly live up to their name, each nastier than the last. Unexpectedly, Ling Wen gave a flat reply. Jingwen Xuanzhen, there's no one here but us right now, and you've had your say. Why keep up the act? Did you actually appoint me as a deputy official because you valued my talent? Others might not know what really happened, but I'm sure you remember the details. Just why did you appoint me? And do you recall how you treated me afterwards? Julian was growing more curious the longer he listened. You're like flashing green, your webcam.
I know. I don't know what's going on.
Julian was growing more curious the longer he listened. What happened between Jingwen Shenjun and Lingwen? General Pei Jr., do you know the story behind this? Pei Shu was also listening intently. I'm sorry. I had yet to ascend at the time, so I don't know much. His broken sentences are probably beyond saving, Julian thought. Hua Cheng spoke up. Gaga, no need to ask others, just ask me. Julian was amazed. Sunlong, do you know about Heaven's past scandals, too? As it turned out, that was no exaggeration. When it came to the shady history and associated hearsay of every major heavenly official in the upper court, Hua Cheng certainly did his homework. He nodded and told Julian what he knew. The story was this. Jingwen and Lingwen were both civil gods born of the kingdom of Zhu Li. Jingwen was older than Lingwen by many centuries, and he had a deep foundation in the kingdom of Zhu Li. Originally, the two weren't supposed to cross paths. However, one year the kingdom of Zhu Li conducted a ceremonial festival to revere and worship the civil gods. As a part of the festival, there was a small contest. Young scholars were to compose anonymous essays that would be hung in the kingdom's largest civil god temple, at the time the palace of Jingwen. The kingdom of Zhu Li itself was the subject, and the content of the essays was unrestricted. The compositions would be judged by the people, and the best of the bunch would be selected as the winner and afforded much commendation. At the time, Jingwen Shenzhen had descended to dally about the mortal realm, and on impulse he thought it'd be fun to transform into a scholar and join the contest. With an easy swing of his brush he wrote a jaunty, elegant piece, singing praises to the glory of the kingdom of Zhu Li. He was quite confident that his composition would stand out from the crowd and take first place. He imagined that if he revealed his true form once the result of the contest was revealed, showing all the onlookers that the winner was actually a clone of Jingwen Shenzhen, surely his story would be passed down as a beautiful tale for future generations. If things had turned out that way, it would have been a happy ending. However, the results were far more awkward. After the ceremony ended and the ranking boards was revealed, the winner was not Jingwen's Ode to Zhu Li, but a piece of critical political discourse entitled Need Not Zhu Li. This turn of events might have been awkward, but the bystanders did find it rather interesting. Has San Lang ever read Need Not Zhu Li? Julian inquired. I've flipped through it, Hua Cheng said. If Gaga wants to read it, I'll recite a summary for you another time. No, it's okay, Julian said hurriedly. I imagine it must have been very well written if it defeated the already ascended Jingwen Shenzhen. It's not bad, but it wasn't groundbreaking, Hua Cheng commented. It's just that the political situation in the kingdom of Zhu Li wasn't great at the time. The people were full of complaints, so a piece like that matched their tastes. Essays like Ode to Zhu Li were rampant, and people were tired of them. When comparing the two, naturally Need Not Zhu Li won. Julian gave a slight nod. There is no such thing as a number one in literature. It's all subjective. A win like that wouldn't really matter, especially if the content wasn't even similar. Correct, Hua Cheng said. Jingwen thought so too, at first. The people of Zhu Li looked everywhere for the author of Need Not Zhu Li. But of course no one claimed it. Who would dare claim such a piece? Those who were greedy for fame and came forward with false claims of authorship were all quickly exposed. Soon government officers took notice, and the top-ranking essay was removed from the festival. Jingwen Xuanjun wasn't too pleased with the results of the contest and sniffed at them. But after a few months, he'd forgotten about the whole thing. The tragedy was that after a few months, shocking news spread through the civil gods in the upper court. The individual who had authored Ni Not Zhu Li and won the civil gods ceremonial festival of Zhu Li had been found, arrested, and locked up in prison. And this individual was a young woman who sold shoes on the streets. How could this be? Unacceptable. A shoe seller? Julian was amazed. Yes, Hua Cheng replied. That's what Nangangji did before she was mortal. Did while she was mortal. Hold on, I'm gonna let Scout out. You want to leave? So Ling Wen was originally a poor shoe seller on the streets. I love her. Scout,
Which,
stop. Oh my god. I'm just gonna
oh,
go feed her right now because she's being a little bitch. I'll be right back.
okay.
Gotta set my alarm for 8. A shoe seller? Shilian was amazed. Yes, Huacheng replied. That's what Nangangji did while she was mortal. No wonder he'd heard people call the palace of Lingwen a palace of shitty shoes, under their breath more than on one occasion. Since Shilian didn't think it right to inquire about the root of such things, he never learned where the term came from. Originally, there was no way anyone would connect Ninat Julie with the shoe-selling maiden. However, the young woman would sometimes help others scribe letters or poems to make some extra income. One of her commissioners discovered that her writing was similar to the style of that infamous winning essay and reported her, which was how she was eventually caught. After learning of this news, Jingwen Shenjun immediately appointed the young woman Nangangji to the heavens with a swing of his brush. It must be known that female heavenly officials were already few in number at the time. They weren't entirely absent from the heavenly ranks, but most of them oversaw things like flowers and plants, crafts and embroidery, singing and dancing, or other such skills. Even as deputy officials of the lower court, no one wanted to appoint a woman. Female civil gods were rarer still. The women within the temples of civil gods were all identically beautiful, and none of them controlled anything scholarly. They were usually soft, gentle souls who ground ink and set out paper. They were hardly considered real heavenly officials. At most, they were seen as objects to be appreciated. So, like, early secretaries. Jingwen Xuanjun's actions garnered praise from the other civil gods. Everyone said this young woman had the best luck for his wise eyes to fall upon her. Not only did she escape the trial of prison, she was able to climb above the trees to become a phoenix. Truly a beautiful tale. In reality, the main characters of this beautiful tale were at each other's throats. I thought so highly of you, but you made it sound like I had ill intent, Jingwen accused. Lingwen always treated others politely, never sounding servile nor overbearing, but in that moment his voice had an air of derision. Please, there's no need for you to go around telling everyone how highly you thought of me. If you really regarded me so highly, you wouldn't have made me serve tea and water to everyone in the palace for so many years. Or maybe wipe tables. Walk hundreds of kilometers just to collect poetry manuscripts and ceaselessly deliver gifts to other heavenly officials on every holiday. Thinking back on it, Jillian thought Ling Wen's complaints sounded accurate. Back when he first ascended, Ling Wen was always on the errand every time he saw her. It was precisely because she ran so many errands that Jillian was able to vaguely remember such a character. At the end of the day, you were just upset I refused to promote you, Jingwen retaliated. But did you ever consider why I didn't promote you? Why? Lingwen echoed. I want to know why, too. When I was immortal, I had time to read and write. Even when I was locked up in jail, I could at least face the wall and tranquilly reflect. After I was appointed, there wasn't a day I didn't work like a horse for you, running errands for you, and prostrating to you, and everyone in heaven. If you had wanted to grind me to death, you couldn't have thought of a better way to do it. Nangong, Jingwen barked. You dare refuse to admit your wrongs even now? And what wrongs have I committed? Lingwen countered. Are you saying it's all my fault? Jingwen demanded. The things I made you do were obviously in your best interests. If you can't even handle such trivial matters, what right do you have to take on more important duties? I gave you so many training opportunities in order to toughen you up. You can blame me for not promoting you when you were the one lacking in ability. You think too highly of yourself. No matter what, you're still a woman. You can't reach such heights. You have to admit that is the truth. Lingwen laughed out loud, yet he seemed furious. Very well, his voice dropped. You said I can't reach that high. Then might I ask, at the highest peak of its prominence, did the palace of Jingwen even reach the knees of today's palace of Lingwen? Shilian could smell the roiling brew of their past resentment growing thicker, and he didn't think he could let them keep talking much longer. With no other choice, he employed a very brutish method. He punched the ground with a powerful fist. A large crater formed with him at the center, accompanied by a massive boom. Hua Chung instantly understood what he wanted to do. Gaga. Shilian flapped his hand to disperse the dust in the air and coughed a few times. It's the most direct way. I'll take care of this side. Sunlong, you and General Pei Jr. go lie down over there. He'd initially wanted Hua Chung and Pei Shu to try the other direction, but in their current states, he wasn't sure they were capable. But Hua Chung was hardly going to listen to him and laze around willingly. He positioned himself opposite Shilian's chosen direction, summoned Ming, and plunged the blade into the ground. This strike and Shilian's fist both created the same effect. The pair took turns, producing huge noise after huge noise, moving further and further away from each other as they went. After pounding a few times, Shilian stopped to listen, but Pei Ming and Lingwen didn't react. It looked like they hadn't heard the booming sounds he was creating. As for Jingwen, Lingwen had clearly hit him where it hurt. He sneered at the mask of politeness was ripped off, and he returned to the sharp, sour tone he had employed when calling them a nasty couple. Nangang Ji, don't get cocky just because you've had the taste of success, you little rat! If it wasn't for me appointing you to the heavens, who knows how many men you would have borne spawn for in jail. Now that comment was quite ungentlemanly, and Jillian's hand almost slipped. Even Pei Ming couldn't listen anymore. You were once a civil god. Have a little class. See, Nangang, Jingwen accused. See how your good lover is shielding you? General Pei, are you to accuse me of being classless? In your mind, who isn't my lover? Lingwen spat. You're looking for retribution? Then let's talk retribution. Shilian had leapt quite a distance by now. He once again slammed the ground, and this time Jingwen's alarmed voice sounded on the other end of the silver butterfly. What's that noise? Shilian cheered inwardly. He was headed in the right direction. Pei Ming and Lingwen both heard, too. Did someone start fighting up above? Pei Ming hesitantly wondered. This time, Shilian dashed for several meters and landed an even stronger, thunderous punch. It's closer now, Pei Ming exclaimed. What destructive power! It came from right above us. He'd found the spot. Let me drink. Pei Ming's like, I'm a misogynist, but at least I would never call a woman a slut.
I'm not that bad of a
I'm not
misogynist.
that bad of a misogynist. Shilian didn't throw another punch. Instead, he pulled out Fangshin and thrust the sword downward. The aura of the sword erupted, and the ground trembled as it caved in. A moment later, Shilian fell into an eerie underground cave. He silently prayed that he hadn't crashed right over Pei Ming and Lingwen's heads. He waved away the dust in the air as he rose to his feet, turning around with sword in hand. Jing! He called. The moment Jingwen Shenzhen's figure entered his sight, Shilian's eyes went wide. Jingwen was alarmed at the sight of an intruder. Who are you? But the one questioning Shilian wasn't actually a man. It was a stone statue of a man, extremely coarsely made, its body bare but wrapped with cloth. It was bizarre and completely absurd. No wonder there was no sound of footsteps when he walked, only strange thumping sounds. No wonder when Pei Ming and Ling Wen saw him, they were both shocked. And no wonder Pei Ming and Ling Wen were spouting drivel with eyes wide open, because this thing looked absolutely nothing like a female ghost. Pei Ming and Ling Wen were both tied up with what looked like scrolls. They were in Jingwen's clutches and unable to move. Shilian finally stepped out of it. Me? Jingwen asked. You're the crown prince of Shenle? Shilian was taken aback. Huh? You actually recognize me? Well, that's truly... But it wasn't really that strange. Shilian's first ascension was an earth-shattering event. He might not have known every upper court heavenly official, but every one of them knew him. And even now, it was the same. He didn't remember Jingwen's original appearance whatsoever, but Jingwen still remembered him. Of course. Your Highness's journey of godhood had such up and downs. It'd be difficult not to recognize you. Shilian felt oddly touched. I am honored, but how did you turn into... How did I turn into this? Jingwen finished for him. Shilian cleared his throat softly and nodded, feeling that his question was a bit impolite. However, Jingwen used this chance to start ranting again. It's all thanks to that wretched Nangong Ji. When the palace of Jingwen declined, my spiritual powers grew progressively weaker, and then she added insult to injury by hunting me down and trying to kill me. In order to survive, I had absolutely no choice but to possess this stone statue. It wasn't that bad compared to you, Ling Wen said. You would order me to stay in the palace of Jingwen until midnight, then turn around and tell everyone I stayed behind until late to entice you. Words murder without form. I was much nicer, responding with blatant violence. Then Ling Wen suddenly kicked out and struck Jingwen's lower body. To Julian, this move didn't really look like it would do much. Since she was kicking a stone statue instead of a flesh body, it would at most rip a few of the cloth wrappings around Jingwen. Yet unexpectedly, Jingwen let out a tragic wail, like he really had been kicked in the gonads, and he hastily covered his lower half. However, it was too late. Ling Wen's kick had torn off the layer of white cloth wrapped around his crotch, and Shilian swiftly saw the truth. Under that white cloth, there was nothing. Nothing, in other words, what was supposed to be present in the crotch area of this bare naked stone statue wasn't. It was a eunuch statue. It was a statue of a eunuch slave, Shilian thought. This sort of stone statue was often found in the graves of the powerful and wealthy. They were burial effects steeped in extremely heavy yin energy, so they were indeed a good choice for possession. But it was extremely ironic that a male heavenly official like Jingwen, who was so small-minded about losing to a woman, would find his final resting place in the stone statue of a eunuch slave. There's a fucking picture of her, of male Ling Wen kicking the shit out of the statue.
Interesting.
It's like, bro doesn't even have a dick and he's talking all this shit.
The fucking hand.
Ling Wen burst out laughing. And here I was, wondering why you were so worked up. So this is why. You said I can't reach that high? Well, I can't wait to see how high you can reach in your current state. Now that the cloth covering his shame had been torn off and trampled underfoot, Jingwen was going mad with fury. He grabbed Ling Wen's hair and yelled, Shut up! Who knows how many heavenly officials you slept with to get where you are? What's there to be proud of? Apologize now! The yanking nearly tore a large chunk of Ling Wen's hair from his head, but he endured the pain without begging for mercy. Never mind apologizing. Are you really a civil god? Pei Ming commented with disgust. Such a lack of character and culture. Even shrews on the streets act better than you. Shilian only silently cried his grievances, scared that Jingwen would strangle the two to death on a whim. However, he couldn't help but call out a "Hey!" to gain his attention and raised his hand. Please calm down, Jingwen Shenzhen. It actually makes no difference whether you have that or not. Really, it's true. Jingwen had Lingwen in one hand, and the other covering his groin. Lies, he roared. It makes no difference. Why don't you get rid of yours and see? It's true, believe me, Shilian said earnestly. Even though I have that, I might as well not have it at all, because I'm that. He once again sacrificed himself, offering his own person as proof. Hearing this, Jingwen calmed down a bit. Your what? Just that, you understand, Shilian said. And even if I have it, I never use it. Actually, all such things are mere worldly possessions when it comes to male heavenly officials, or female heavenly officials, or other heavenly officials. He's like, they, thems. It's
Right,
nothing to be
right,
so
right.
preoccupied with when it comes to male heavenly officials or female heavenly officials or other heavenly officials. The girls and the gays and the theys. It's nothing to be so preoccupied with. Jingwen cut him off. If you don't think it matters, why don't you chop off yours to prove it? Shilian was flummoxed into silence.
Whoa.
Didn't you say it makes no difference? Jingwen pressed. Hypocrite. You're obviously reluctant to use it, so don't you use that bullshit to cajole me. You're no youngin' who will repent in tears just because you've given me a couple candies. But it's fine if you won't chop yours off. I'll chop off his instead. He gestured towards Pei Ming, who stood there dumbfounded. What the
Whoa.
fuck? Well, this was a disaster. While there were
Why me?
while there were plenty of people out there who wanted to cut off General Pei's thing, Shilian hardly wanted Jing Wen to get his way. Jingwen Shenzhen, he said hastily. It was wrong for Lingwen to bully you after your decline, but if you bullied her too, you're technically even. There's no need to go to such extremes. As he tried to talk him into distraction, he secretly released Royer, and it slithered behind Jingwen like a snake. Even? It's not that simple, Jingwen countered. But now you've reminded me that there's something I need to grill that wench on. Nangang, did you play a part in the fall of Zhuli? Jingwen was a civil god who the kingdom of Zhuli had placed on the holy altar, which meant that Zhuli was his foundation. If his foundation was destroyed, he would of course be affected and potentially go into decline. Thus, it was reasonable for Jingwen to suspect Lingwen. But after he posed the question, Lingwen kept his lips sealed and refused to answer. Just fess up. Did you do it? Jingwen yelled. I just know it was you. It must have been you, otherwise the kingdom wouldn't have fallen so fast. It's all this insidious bitch's fault. That idiot general must have fallen into your hands. Lingwen hasn't even responded, and you're answering your own questions, Shilian thought. Wait, what? Which general? Lingwen started snickering under his breath. Had Jingwen not been possessing a statue with a completely immobile face, he would have gritted his teeth. What are you laughing about? Lingwen lifted his head slightly to give a light-hearted reply. Do you know the consequences for calling him an idiot to his face? Jingwen hadn't yet grasped the situation when the scroll binding Lingwen suddenly ripped apart. Amidst the whirling shreds, a hand emerged from within Lingwen's black sleeves and seized Jingwen by the head. So like the picture. Jingwen hadn't had the chance to speak a word before he was subdued. A crack appeared upon his coarsely hewn face, and then another, and then another. With 3 cracking sounds, his entire body shattered. As for Lingwen, he had broken free of his bonds and stood in place, enveloped by streams of black chi that emanated from within. A pile of crumbled stone lay at his feet. It turned out the ancient kingdom and the legend of the Brocade Immortal was Zhuli, and Bai Jing was also a citizen of that land. Shilian was just organizing his thoughts when he heard Pei Ming, who was still tightly bound by the scroll, speak up. Lingwen, stop. Lingwen had turned around and was stalking towards him, step by step. Remembering that Lingwen had told Pei Ming that the Brocade Immortal really didn't like him, Shilian thought, oh no, is he going to kill him? Lingwen tried to appease him as he walked. Bai Jing, he's already dead. It's all nonsense. None of it was true. But it wasn't working. Lingwen addressed Pei Ming. Old Pei, I have no way to stop him. He heard Jingwen say you're my lover and has steeled his mind to kill you. Your Highness, lend me a hand. No need to ask. Shilian had already swung his sword and slashed through the scroll binding Pei Ming, who jumped to his feet. The two leapt out of the underground cave, returning to the ground above. Looking back in the cave, they saw that Ling Wen had punched right into the rock where Pei Ming had just been sitting. His strength was considerable, and debris flew. The punch was even stronger than Shilian's strikes, and he was hammering the ground to scout for them. Shilian tucked Royer away by wrapping it around his forearm, and Pei Ming worked out the kinks in his wrist. After being bound for so long, the swelling on his left hand had gone down somewhat. It now looked like he'd been stung by 500,000 hornets instead of 1,000,000. "What is this fucking injustice?" he started. But before he could even finish, Ling Wen appeared right in front of him in a flash. The two exchanged a blow, and both were pushed a few meters back. Shilian and Pei Ming exchanged a look. This situation was too complicated, so they bolted. Shilian turned his head and yelled behind him as he ran, "Ling Wen, can you try to talk to General Bai again?" Ling Wen was hot on their tail. "I tried, but he doesn't believe me anymore." "Must be because he's hurt that you lied to him," Pei Ming shouted. "Ling Wen," Shilian cried, "can you change back to your female form? The destructive power will be reduced in a woman's body." "No," Ling Wen answered. "Why not?" "He won't let me," Ling Wen replied. "I get it. The bastard," Pei Ming said. "The bastard's afraid of clinging to a woman's body. What a wimp." Rumble. A roof came crashing towards them, almost crushing Shilian and Pei Ming. "I didn't throw that," Ling Wen cried. "It's your fault for insulting him. Now he's even madder. You're both in danger." "Huh? What's it got to do with me? I've said nothing," Shilian cried hastily. "Ling Wen, can you tell him to count me out of it, please?" So funny.
This is insane.
It is silly. Ling Wen's like, "Please, I promise, it's not me." Let me get a cough drop here.
Let me get a cough drop.
"Better to count you in. It's easier with more people to shoulder the burden," Pei Ming yelled. "Your Highness, where's little Pei, the state preceptor of Banyue? Your crimson rain-sought flower?" "Don't count on them showing up. They went in the other direction to search for you two," Shilian yelled back. "We've already covered over a dozen kilometers. Run first, talk later." He's absorbed over 1,000 nefarious creatures. It wouldn't be smart to face him head-on right now. Yet unexpectedly, just as the words left his lips, his feet went light as his entire body was hoisted up. And not just him. Pei Ming was caught too. As he looked around, he realized that they'd both been captured by a large net and were now hanging in the air. What an unexpected disaster. The net must have been made of some special material, and bare hands couldn't rip it apart. 100 or 200 ferocious, savage ghosts and Yao jumped out from the woods all around them, clapping in joy. "Caught them! Ha ha ha! How many is that now? The trap is so good. Let's see what we've caught. How many heads?" They had paid no attention to the road they'd followed during their panicked escape, and in a moment of carelessness they had fallen into a trap set by these third-rate minions. Shilian reached out for Fengshen to slash through the net, but when he found his back empty, he realized that Fengshen had fallen from his grip when he was yanked up. Ling Wen had already chased them to the net, and Fengshen lay at his feet. The mob of little minions hadn't yet realized what they had approached, and they were overjoyed. "Another one!" Ling Wen raised his hands, and 2 balls of black ghost fire ignited in his palms. He looked up to address Shilian and Pei Ming. "You two, this really isn't up to me." Shilian puffed a breath. "Ling Wen, can I ask what will happen if we're hit by those?" "Last time I used ghost fires that big, I was attacking His Highness Qi Ying. He was injured, but it wasn't too bad. He could still hop around and run." It sounded like the damage wouldn't be severe. Even if they were hit, their injuries wouldn't be too dire. Shilian and Pei Ming both sighed in relief. Thank goodness. But as soon as he said that, the ghost fire in Ling Wen's hands suddenly erupted in 10 times its original size, into 2 giant pillars of flame blazing into the skies. Shilian was speechless. Pei Ming was also speechless. "But if you get hit by the flames of this size, I can't say how things will turn out," Ling Wen said. "Wait, I'm really not your lover, though," Pei Ming roared. "I know that, but it doesn't matter if we're the only ones who believe it," Ling Wen exclaimed. The nefarious creatures were startled by the blazing ghost fires, and they quickly drew their weapons. They shouted with arrogant indignation as they circled Ling Wen. You bastard! You've got guts trying to steal our kill when you're about to die yourself. Get him! How pathetic little minions like these posed no threat to the Brocade Immortal. They were nothing but another round of fresh nourishment. Ling Wen inclined his head slightly, his eyes reflecting the vibrant light of the ghost fires. He looked quite ready to receive a set of new heads for those who were so eager to sacrifice themselves. At that moment, a wild whirlwind blew by. In the blink of an eye, the mob of little minions was blown into the sky with a chorus of terrified wails. Rather than being tossed skyward by wind, it was more like an invisible giant hand had snatched them into the air. The Brocade Immortal seemed to have sensed something that alarmed it, and the ghost fires blazing in Ling Wen's hands calmed as he scanned the surrounding area. Shilian looked up with arduous effort, but the dense tree cover blocked his view. The wails of those ghosts had come to an abrupt stop, so he couldn't figure out what had happened above. Pei Ming was also alarmed. "Who's there?" Ever alert and watchful, Shilian suddenly said, "Do you smell that?" "What?" Pei Ming said. "The scent of flowers," Shilian replied. Pei Ming was confused. "Flowers?" Shilian closed his eyes. A moment later he said with conviction, "Yes, it's the scent of flowers." It was mellow, peculiar, fresh, and cool. He didn't know the name of the bloom nor its source. It was exceedingly light, exceedingly soft, and so faint it was as if it weren't even there. Pei Ming furrowed his brows. "I don't smell flowers, but I definitely smell—" Before he could finish, he felt something drip onto his face. He wiped it with his hands without thinking, and his pupils shrank. It was blood. A few drops fell onto the ghost fire in Ling Wen's hands, and the flames intensity instantly weakened. His expression grew even more apprehensive, and his head shut up. Right at that moment, a torrential rain of blood fell from the heavens. Pei Ming was hanging higher than Shilian, and the blood deluge drenched him until he was like a red-dyed, drowned rat, leaving only a pair of eyes that were black and white, round and bulging. The ghost fire in Ling Wen's hand was completely extinguished, and he scurried over a tree to avoid the same fate as the defenseless Pei Ming. As for Shilian, he felt the net tear and his body drop, and he plunged downwards. He flipped in the air as he fell, and landed steadily just as the bloody rain was about to descend upon him. There was no time to dodge, so Shilian raised his sleeve to block as much as he could. After things went dark, he heard the soft, low rumble of laughter. The air was awash in the mysterious, alluring fragrance of blossoms. Shilian lifted his head and looked up. He didn't feel any raindrops hitting his face. Instead, something soft gently brushed past him. He reached out and caught it. Looking down, the thing had quietly fluttered into the heart of his palm, was a small, vibrant, red flower petal. He looked up once more, and his breath hitched. He couldn't believe it. The bloody rain that had darkened the sky had been transformed into a shower of fluttering flower petals. There was no need to guess who had come. Shilian curled his fingers to clutch the flower petal as the name blurted from his lips. "Sun Long!" He turned around and saw that Ling Wen had fallen soundlessly to the ground. A tall, slender young man stood there, chuckling softly. With the hair of raven black and robes of crimson red, he could be none other than Hua Cheng. Blossoms fell like blood. Blood danced like petals on the wind. His face was as spirited and handsome as the first time they met, and his eye was bright and lively. He languidly sheathed that long, slender silver scimitar and spoke with a deep voice. "Your Highness, I'm back." And there's an image of him.
My sweetie pie.
He's back to normal.
Yay!
And that's the end of that.
Slay.
We'll stop there. That was 2 chapters.
Wow.
So now we're on 82. We're almost halfway through this book.